Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone. My name is Malik, and in today's video, we're going to be going over GlobalProtect. The agenda is answer the question, what is GlobalProtect? What are the components involved in getting GlobalProtect working? And then after that, I'll go through a step-by-step configuration on getting GlobalProtect, working. Once we do that, we're going to test to make sure that the configuration was successful and that we are able to access from the external network, we're able to access the internal network. Okay, so let's quickly talk about this diagram before we get into that. So on the left-hand side, you have the internal network. This is the network that we're going to try to get into once we get GlobalProtect working. We're going to bring .10 and .11, which are these simulator servers. And then on the middle, you have your firewall, the Palo Alto firewall, and this is where we will be spending most of our time. And then on the right-hand side, you have your external network. Towards the bottom, this is basically Windows Server 2019 that I'm going to be installing the GlobalProtect client software on, and from there we should be able to get to the internal network. The one thing that I'll mention is if you're doing this at home, make sure you are able to get to the outside interface of your firewall, the interface that's connected to the ISP. In my scenario, I have routing configured, so everything is working. But quickly, let's actually test, because I had a situation where I wasn't able to ping the outside interface. I'm trying to explain this. Okay, so let's quickly check, because without that, nothing is going to work. We need to be able to access that, because that's where the portal is going to be configured. So 20.65.10.1, and that's good. We can get to that. So now that we have an understanding of the topology, let's go ahead and answer the question, what is GlobalProtect? The first thing that probably comes to your mind is that GlobalProtect is a remote access VPN, and you would be right, it is a remote access VPN. However, that's not all GlobalProtect is, okay? So it does more than that. For example, URL filtering, advanced threat prevention. Basically, GlobalProtect brings you the capabilities of the Palo Alto next generation firewall to basically extends those capabilities to the client software or the GlobalProtect user, the external GlobalProtect user. So that's what GlobalProtect is. Now let's discuss the components that are involved. You have the portal, the gateway, and the client software. Okay, so the portal basically provides configuration, information management to the client software. Some of the information that it provides is how to access the gateway, basically the IP address of the gateway. It also gives you certification, a certificate on accessing the gateway, as well as the client software. So that's what the portal provides. The gateway basically enforces security policies as well as VPN access. The client software, basically, that's what you configure on the GlobalProtect user to access, obviously, to access the portal and the gateway. So those are the components. Now let's go through a high-level overview of the configuration that's involved. You have, and then you don't necessarily have to configure a tunnel interface, but in my scenario, I'll be configuring the tunnel interface first. This is where the VPN is going to be initiated. After that, I'm going to generate some certificates. I'll then configure SSL and TLS service profiles, basically calling the certificates that I've configured, and then configure a server profile. I'm actually I don't have a server set up yet. I don't have LDAP or Radius, anything like that set up. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using the local database of the firewall. After that, we're going to configure authentication profile, the gateway, the portal, the client software. We're going to make sure that we have the latest client software, and the security policy and that also needs to be configured. Obviously, you have to make sure that the GlobalProtect, if you have a different zone, you got to make sure that zone, the GlobalProtect zone, is able to communicate with the internal zone. In my scenario, I will be configuring a different zone. And one other thing that I want to mention is, so the portal and the gateway don't necessarily have to be on the same firewall. They can be on two different physical firewalls, which then means that you will be using two different IP addresses, right? So in my scenario, I'm using a single firewall, so I will be using 209.165.10.1 for both the portal and the gateway, and the certificates are also going to be the same. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the configuration. All right, yeah, there it is. Okay, so this is the firewall. Let's log into it and get it configured. So I'll start off with the tunnel as I mentioned. To do that, click on network, tunnel interface, go into interfaces, So network, interfaces, and then tunnel. After that, on the bottom, click on add, and here is where you basically provide the tunnel interface, and they say in name, but I'll just .10, and then after that, you can leave a comment. I'll just say GlobalProtect VPN tunnel. And then the virtual router that I'll be using is the one that's already in place, called VR. The security zone, as I mentioned, I'm going to be using a different security zone than my internal network or corporate network, so which I already created. That's the global VPN. I'm not going to be assigning an IP address. This is needed for if you're going to be doing dynamic routing, and in this case, I'm not doing dynamic routing, so I'm done with the tunnel interface configuration. Let's move on to creating the certificates. So to do that, click on device, certificate management, and then certificate. From here, click on generate. The first certificate that we're going to be creating is called a CA certificate, okay? The certificate authority, which will be the one that's signing the portal and the GlobalProtect certificate, okay? The intermediate certificates, also known as the root certificate. So the CA certificate basically is the root certificate, so we'll go ahead and create that. GlobalProtect. And it's not going to be signed by anybody because it is the root, so it is the certificate authority. And that's all we're going to be doing here. Let's generate that certificate. And next, we're going to create the intermediate certificate. We'll call this, I don't want to call it external because this is going to be used for both the portal and the gateway. So we'll just say GlobalProtect portal and gateway cert. Okay. Okay. The common name is basically, it can be a fully qualified domain name or the IP, and I don't have domain set up, so I'm going to be using the public IP address that I have configured on the Palo Alto. So that's going to be 209.165.10.1. It's going to be signed by the certificate that we just created, which was the GlobalProtect certificate. And that's it on here as well. We'll go ahead and generate that. And I have been running into some issues with this firewall. So once I create the SSL TLS profile, I'm going to commit this configuration in case I run into a problem. So the SSL and TLS service profile, this is basically where we call the certificate we generated, and this is how the client software communicates with the portal and the gateway. So this certificate is going to be pushed down to the client software, and they'll be able to communicate with the gateway and the portal securely via HTTPS. So let's go ahead and create that SSL cert for GlobalProtect. Okay, and let's select that certificate. Click OK. All right, so now that we're done with that, let me quickly, actually, let's finish up the user configuration as well, and then after that we'll commit. So let's just say user 1. Provide a password. Okay. Now we'll create another user. User 2. Okay, and again, to create that, you basically go down to local user database and then click on users, and from there you can click on add. And what I'll do is I'll put these in actually a user group. So let's go ahead and do that. Then I will add both of those users to the user group. And once you have those users created, you have to call them. Just like when we create a certificate, we call those certificates on a SSL TLS profile. We have to call these users under the authentication profile. So let's do that. You know what? I don't like using uppercase. So we'll do GlobalProtect auth profile. What do you say, prof? And from here, we're gonna say local database. Select local database, advanced, and from this is where we're gonna be adding the GlobalProtect user group. And the reason that's the reason why I created the user group. I didn't want to select user 1 and user 2, especially if you have multiple users. It's much better to create a user group. So we're done with that. Now that we're done with that, I'm gonna go ahead and commit that configuration, and then we'll move on to configuring the portal, the gateway, and then look into the client software. Okay, perfect. Now that that configuration is committed, let's move on to configuring the gateway. And to do that, we click on network, and then under GlobalProtect, select gateway, and on the bottom, click on add. Let's give it a name. We'll say GlobalProtect gateway external or ext gateway. The interface that the gateway is going to be on is Ethernet 1.2, which is the outside interface. Let's move on to authentication. Let's provide the certificate, and then client authentication. These are the authentication profile we provided earlier, that we configured earlier. So let's go ahead and provide that. Protect client auth. Any OS, it doesn't matter. We'll just leave it at that. Okay, that's all we need to do here. So click on OK. And then we'll go to the agent, and this is where all the good stuff happens. So we'll do the tunnel mode. This is for the VPN. We're going to select the tunnel that we created. Okay, and then we click on client settings. This information is going to be pushed down to the client via the client software. To do that, let's provide a pool, and the pool that I'm going to provide is going to be from 10.1.1.1 to 10.1.1.2. We don't even have two computers, but I'll just do that. We're not doing split tunneling, or are we pushing down network services to the client. So let's leave it at that and click OK. Next, let's configure the portal. Alright, click on portal, and then after that add. And on here, we'll just say GlobalProtect portal. Again, since this is on the same firewall, we're going to be using the same interface, which is Ethernet 1.2. And like I mentioned earlier, you have to make sure that you are able to access that outside interface in order to reach the portal. So that's all we need to do here. Next, we'll move on to the authentication. Same thing as before. We provide the SSL TLS profile that we configured earlier, and then the user as well. So go ahead and click save. And once you have that configured, the next thing is the agent. So we'll add. So this is basically as I mentioned earlier, the portal is going to be the one that's providing the gateway IP address, the certification, and all that good stuff. So here we're going to be adding the external gateway, which we configured already. So, but let's name this. Alright, once you have that, move on to external. We don't have an internal. Internal would be if the gateway was residing on your internal network, not outside of your external network, internal network. So here, we'll go ahead and add the external gateway. We'll provide the IP address, which is 209.165.10.1 IP. Oh, actually, that's where the name goes, not the IP. So let's say external gateway. To 9.165.10.1. Just to verify that's the IP. Alright. Source region, we're just going to select on any. You can be specific if you want to. That's all you really need to do there. What else? So the app, you can say user logs on, always on, or you can change the setting. For me, I'll just say manual, just because I want to be able to disconnect it and connect it whenever I want to. But obviously, if this was a real user, I will just keep it on always on. That way, I mean, it's the company's computer anyways, and there's no reason for them to turn that off, and that's a good way to keep that computer secure. And as I mentioned, all the policies are going to be pushed down to that client software from the firewall. So it's a good way to keep that computer secure. So that's all we need to really do here. There's nothing else that we need to configure on here. We got the external configured app selected for what I wanted. Okay, that's it. And on here, we're going to add the root certificate, which is that GlobalProtect certificate. And we're good to go on here. All right, now let's verify that the client software is up to date. To do that, we click on device. And from there, we go down to the GlobalProtect client. And this is where you basically check to see the latest client. So for me, I do have the latest client and I've activated. I already have it downloaded. But in your scenario, you will come down here, click check now, and then once you see the latest one, you click on download, and after that, you'll get another option to activate, and that's it. That's all you really need to do. It's pretty straightforward. So now that we know that's all good, let's move on to the policies. Remember, the one I created is on a different zone, so I have to create a policy allowing the GlobalProtect user, GlobalProtect device or user to be able to communicate with the internal network, or the core. So I'll go ahead and do that quickly. We'll call this GlobalProtect VPN. And to internal or corporate. Yeah, let's say corporate. Source is going to be GlobalProtect VPN. Destination is going to be the corporate, and application any. So we'll just go ahead and leave it at that. We also need to make sure that the GlobalProtect VPN is able to access the internet through the firewall. So I'll go into this one, and I'm just going to add that GlobalProtect VPN to this. I'll go into the NAT policy now, and in the NAT policy, I'll also add that GlobalProtect VPN to the source zone. And we're good to go. Let's go ahead and commit this and test that out, make sure that the configuration was successful and that we are able to access the internal resources from that GlobalProtect client. And yeah, let this commit. Okay, perfect. So the configuration is successful. Let's close this and we'll move on to the client. All right, so this is the client, and I already have the GlobalProtect downloaded, but I'll show you guys how you can do that, or what. So basically, you would browse to the portal. Remember, we configured the portal on that interface. So I'll go ahead and say 209.165.10.1. We'll continue, and then once you browse to that, you log in with the user. So we had two users, user 1 I'll log in with user 1 and provide the password. And then obviously you can download that client, you know, whether you have Mac or Windows, this is where you're able to download that from. But I have it downloaded, so let's see if we're able to connect. That was an old portal IP address, so I'll update that and delete. Are we able to delete that? Okay. Okay, let's select this. Show certificate. You can see that is that GlobalProtect root certificate. So we'll go ahead and install that certificate. Awesome. Let's close this. So now let's connect to that. Just didn't click on continue. And we'll provide a user to this. Whoa, what happened here? User 2, provide that password and sign in. Okay, things are not user 1. Now says 510.1, so the application is failing. Why is that? Is it still trying to? Let's delete that one. Okay. Let's connect this to less. And I think that's what was happening. Maybe it was trying to connect to that old portal. Yeah, so we're connected now. Now that we're connected, let's see if we are able to ping those internal resources. So if you remember the topology, server 1 and server 2 are both configured for 172.16. So .10 and .11 basically, 172.16.1, .10 and .11. Let's see if we can get to those. 16.10 and .16.1.10. Awesome. So we are able to access them, .10 and .11. So that means we do have the GlobalProtect configured correctly. Things are working as expected. I guess I didn't test that at the beginning of the video. So let me disconnect the VPN just so you guys can see that. I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect the VPN. And now that the VPN is disconnected, let's should have just kept it up. Okay, so let's ping those IPs again, 172.16.10 and that means 172.16.1.10. So you can see that we're not able to ping those that IP. If I try to ping .11, I'm not going to be able to ping that either. But let's do this. Let's send a continuous ping and connect the GlobalProtect VPN. Now that the GlobalProtect VPN is connected, let's see what happens. There you go. Now it started pinging and we can see that everything is working as expected. Another thing we can also do is we can look at we can go into the monitor and take a look at GlobalProtect and see what kind of information we're getting here. And you can see user 1 was able to log in. If I change that to user 2, you'll also be seeing that information on here. So let's quickly do that just for fun. Okay, so let's run out of user 1. some into user 2. Now that user 2 is connected, let's go ahead and ping 8.8.8.8. So this is not going through the topology that I have set up. Is you have your ISP. So this is actually not going through the ISP, rather it's going through the firewall, okay? Because there's a VPN connection between the firewall and the GlobalProtect client. So if we go back here now to GlobalProtect, we can see that user 2 logged in, okay? Now if we click on this traffic monitoring, we can also see that user 2 is pinging 8.8.8. So we're done with the lab, guys. Let me know what other labs you guys might be interested in. I'm thinking about high availability, but comment below and let me know what you guys want, and I'll get those labs set up for you guys.